books now. I'm going to go ahead and let her speak. She's right up here, and she's got her interviewer and friend Steph. Come on up. Let's give them a big round of applause. And ladies and gentlemen, Maxym Martineau and Stephanie. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick.
Yes, thank you, Patrick.
So I'm Steph. You don't care about me. You care about this lovely person over here. Do you want to give a little intro to yourself, or you want us to just get chatting?
Sure. I am Maxym Martineau. I am the romantasy author here tonight. I write romantasy because I like kissing and magic and all sorts of fun things. But yes, this is my 5th book, and it's the first in a gothic romantasy duology. So, yeah.
Yes, and it's got an incredible, really rich world. So first I want to start with you telling us about House of Blight in 3 very specific adjectives.
I don't like that.
Sorry.
Very specific. Can you define very specific for me?
No.
Can I use compound adjectives?
Sure.
I would call it...
Cheater.
I know. Brutally beautiful. Feculent. And mysterious.
All right. I like that. Feculent of all words. Okay.
You said unique.
Like oddly specific.
Oddly
I did.
specific.
Okay, so it's a totally brand new world for you because your other 4 books are set in the same world. So has your approach to writing changed from your debut novels and world to this one?
Absolutely. And I think that's just sort of comes with the territory of like writing in general. Like as you write, you learn more about yourself, you learn more about your craft, you learn more about like what you're drawn to. So inherently, yes, it has gotten different. I hesitate to say better. Obviously, everybody gets better the more you practice, that kind of stuff. But for me, House of Blight was really sort of like honoring a bit more of like the darkness elements in my life and like just and some of the dreams that I have and that kind of stuff. And Kingdom of Exiles and that whole series was like an exploration of like a traditional epic fantasy and just like playing with lots of cool magical creatures.
Love it. So the characters in your books, in my opinion, are like really grounded and they feel real. And I know House of Blight came out yesterday, so I won't give any spoilers, but there's an amazing character named Seville in the book who, in my opinion, doesn't show up enough. But she still feels really real. How do you keep your characters real and grounded in such fantastical worlds?
I will let you know that my editor shares that opinion with you. She's very mad that Seville
Because it's right.
Because it's right. It is an accurate opinion. Not only Seville, but all of them. I try to do really in-depth like character work before I even write the book. So I do things like interview my own characters and create character backstories and like one thing I always try to give every character is their own internal conflict. Even if it doesn't show up on page, you might not know about it. Those internal conflicts and even some of like the mannerisms that I might give them are specific to them and influence the way that they interact and talk to other people in the book. Even if you don't know it, that's what's driving their force for like how they choose to respond. And so like Seville's backstory, which I'm not going to tell you, very much drives all of her actions and why she is so removed and why she is very cunning and aloof and like chooses to sort of play the field, if you will. So, yeah.
Nice. I like it. On your point about kind of complex characters, you have a lot of morally gray characters, we'll say. Have any of your characters ever made a decision that you really fought with and you were trying to write it out, but they were like, no, this is what I'm doing?
It's really interesting about morally gray characters because I write things that I would never want to see actually happen. Like, you know, I write fantasy, so people die. Sorry, it happens. And I don't actually want to see that in real life. But I really want them to do it in the book. So sometimes I struggle with that a little bit, but at the same time, I'm like, how far can I push this without it being questionable and having people come check on my mental well-being? So I struggled with that a little bit with Adira, and this, I can't talk too heavily about it, just came out yesterday. I would spoil so much for you if I told you the ending, so I'm not going to. But her character arc and her trajectory within the book very much is about like learning to accept who she is and put herself first a little bit. And so she has a lot of decisions that she struggles with throughout the book until she kind of just cracks. And I think that's a very human thing, is that sometimes we crack and make decisions we might not like or we might be okay with. And it's sort of like the darker inner side of ourselves that it's just like we have to accept that that's part of it. So that's all I got.
That's fair. You didn't really answer the question, though, but
Okay.
we'll let it go.
I don't no. So, if you really want to answer the question, no, I would do everything my characters would do, and I would just commit murder. Sure, fine. If somebody did any of that to me, is that what you're asking me?
Yeah.
Fine.
Did somebody say, like, I'm going to kill this person, and you were like, I like that person, and they said, I don't care.
No,
They're dead.
No.
All right, fair.
no. I want everyone who died deserved to die.
I mean, honestly, that's facts, so that's fine.
Okay.
Do your characters, I'm kind of like maybe hearing this, do your characters talk to you?
Yes.
Like, okay.
Yes. 100%.
Does one of your characters, like when you're in the early stages, do you have a character that's like in the back of your head saying like, here's my story and I want you to tell it?
For sure. Yes. I've always kind of been very character driven when it comes to my stories in general. Like I talked a little bit about the back matter that I essentially create for myself beforehand with like all the interviews and whatnot. But there are certainly been times where a lot of my stories and my characters and whatnot sort of come from my dreams. I'm very, very vivid lucid dreamer. And like there have been moments in my past where like I will literally have a dream where I'm sitting down and talking to my character. And so my character then tells me about their life and their backstory and that kind of stuff. And then I get to cheat and just wake up and write about it, right? So I'm not very inventive, I promise. And that's very common for me. And I also get the really, really angry characters who get mad at me when I try to write things that don't fit their character. #1 insect daddy who doesn't like it when I am not very nice. So read the book, you'll understand.
Insect daddy's got to get over
Insect daddy
it.
for life.
Yes, honestly. Okay, so a fun one. You have 2 very distinct fantasy worlds. If you had to pick one of them to live in for a week, which one would you pick?
A week.
And what would you do? You can do longer or shorter than a week.
Are we talking like purely survival tactic? Or are we talking like I get to enjoy it and not,
you get
like,
to enjoy it.
worry
You
about
get to
my
like
life?
be in the world.
So my first series has a lot of really cool magical creatures, so I think that would be fun. Like the adult in me who's a gamer and plays Pokemon wants to run around and like capture magical creatures and play with them. So if they're not at a risk to my well-being, because a lot of them are very dangerous, then that's what I would do. However, the characters, I'd probably rather hang out with the ones in House of Blight, just because
Only some of them.
only some. Well, yeah, I think not mentioning the aforementioned one who deserves his death, her death, their death. Yeah.
Okay. On the note about magical creatures, if you had to pick one, which I'm sure is like picking your many children. You don't have many children. Picking your children, picking one of your children.
How many children?
Or pets or things. Which one would you pick and why?
Like a companion?
Yes.
Am I making it up on the spot?
It can be one that already exists or you can make it up. That sounds even more fun, honestly.
Well, I mean, like, I love Yowena from House of Blight. She's
no,
like...
no.
Oh.
Kingdom of Exiles creatures.
Oh.
We're going to get to Yowena. Don't worry.
Okay. Man. I mean, it's hard for me not to pick Onyx. Yeah. Because for those of you who aren't familiar with it, Onyx is the main feline-esque, like, cat creature in Kingdom of Exiles that is, like, Lena's driving force for, like, the book in the series, at least the first book, to, like, exonerate herself. And there's a lot of emotions attached with that. I also really like Cospoy, the future-telling fox. Yeah.
Me too. Boy,
Okay.
yeah, for sure. Okay, so we'll talk about Yowena.
Yowena. Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Is it a spoiler to talk about what Yowena is and how?
No, I don't think so.
Okay,
I don't
tell
think
us
so.
about Yowena.
So Yowena is inspired by Rosie Maplemoth, and she is a magical creature-esque, like adjacent, with the ability to detect inflections in your heart rate and whether or not you're lying, or in Adira's case, breathing improperly. And she shocks you as sort of like a reminder. Throughout the book, this becomes Adira's companion and also just in a way of like a source of comfort. But she starts as like a training tactic to help her learn how to regulate her breaths a little bit better, to channel her powers, like all of that stuff. But then very quickly becomes like a dear pet. She's very cute, even though I'm terrified of moths.
What?
I am. This was
I
an
didn't know
exercise.
that.
Yeah, I am. I'm actually deathly afraid of moths. You can ask my mom, who's in the audience.
Is this like an exposure therapy thing then?
This is exposure therapy for me. Yes, absolutely. No, I used to have a fear that moths would like fly into my room at night and eat my clothes from my body. I understand logistically that like that is not an immediate thing. Like if you get moths in your closet, it takes years for them to like devour an article of clothing. Not the dreams I had. In the dreams I had, it was just like an instantaneous thing.
That's also like a very specific kind of moth.
Is it?
Yeah, like you're not
I don't
gonna
know, I
have
have
a Luna
one.
moth like in your closet eating your clothes.
Maybe. I don't know. Listen, it's an irrational fear. You're trying to make it rational by picking the moth type. That's not rational at all. It's an irrational fear.
Fair. Okay, fair. So does like my moth sleeve freak you
No,
out?
because I have one now too. It's like you said, it's exposure therapy. I'm
Okay,
just
all right.
forcing myself to like it. And that's why like I created cute insects.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So she becomes like a companion.
Yes.
Now I am going to make you come up with something on the spot.
Oh God. Okay.
If you had a companion like her, whether it was for a training purpose or a comfort thing, what kind of little companion creature would you make?
Little.
I mean, it doesn't have to be little.
I know, but I like the idea of like a cozy.
Me too. Like something just
like a poof.
resting on your shoulder.
Yeah. Gosh, I'm gonna avoid like the traditional cat and dog because
Yeah, boring.
just sorry, you're out. You're just out. I actually grew up with ferrets, and I really like ferrets, and I think they're full of personality, and I feel like a ferret companion, like with some sort of like magical ability to like be sassy, because I need a sassy companion.
Obviously.
Obviously,
Yeah.
would be fantastic. I don't know what its magical power would be, but it could just be sassy with me, and that would be fine. They're kind of already sassy, honestly.
They kind of are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Fair. So we're gonna do a little publishing chat. If you could time travel back in time to your pre-published self, what's a piece of advice that you would give yourself?
I would tell myself to honor my gut. And that kind of is a loaded answer because there's a lot in publishing you don't control at all. And that's one of the things that I didn't really understand going into it. Everyone like gets really excited. They're like, "Oh, you're an author. You got your dream out there. It's everything you wanted it to be." And there's a whole lot that goes into it, like your agent, your publisher, your editor, like the market at the time, what's happening in the world at the time. I mean, my first book came out in 2017, and then the next one was like right before freaking COVID. And then after that, it was post-COVID. And then like there's always something going on, and you're trying to hit a market, but you have no idea where the market's going. And if you spend all this time trying to chase a moving target, you're never going to be happy. So trust your gut, write the story you want to write, and it'll hopefully work out. And if not, you just keep trying.
Just keep going,
Just
for
keep
sure.
going.
When you were writing House of Blight, did you do any research? And if you did, was there any kind of interesting mythology or history fact that made its way into the book?
I am not a historical writer. In fact, historical anything scares the living crap out of me because I know how particular historical readers are, and I don't want to mess that up. So, did I research? Sure, but it was purely for inspiration's sake. And that's also why I write fantasy, because then I get to say, but it's a fantasy world. So if I'm not quite right, it's okay. So for me, for House of Blight, it was kind of a couple of different sources of inspiration that I like went out and watched. I went out and watched Dorian Gray because I really liked that element and that story as like the inspiration for the Everlivings in this book. They're very obsessed with their image and how they present to the world. And really, they have this like dark underside that no one's really aware of. And it very much gives that duality with the mirror and the dichotomy and what's happening underneath. And it feels very gothic. And then I went to ASU and got my degree in English literature there. And so I have already a little bit of knowledge set in like, you know, some other forms of literature. And I remembered, oh gosh, I love Edgar Allan Poe. Who doesn't? But he could be a bit much sometimes. But I specifically went back and reread Mask of the Red Death. especially when I'm thinking about Blight. And even though like the plague itself isn't heavily described in Mask of the Red Death, it's sort of the ominous presence of it. And even if you can't see Blight all the time in the book, I wanted that ominous presence, that reminder, this darkness, this thing underlying beneath the surface. So for me, I was like, if I could write like Poe and make everyone like question their sanity, that's what I want to do in long form. And then the prologue was inspired by Grimm's fairy tales, Death's Messenger. What would happen if you met death at a four-way stop? And how would you escape it?
So that's funny that you mentioned the prologue, because this is the only prologue you've ever written. Why did you?
Because I hate prologues.
No. I know that. Why did you feel like this book needed a
I
prologue?
don't know.
Oh, okay. There was no reason?
It was one of those moments where I knew the backstory that I can't tell you yet, because book two.
I know. But
All right. Okay. Well, fair. But for book two, and I was like, this is going to be really important, but it's not pertinent to the exact moment right now. So how do I seed this idea later? Plus, if you pick up on it as you read throughout the book, Adira has a lovely library montage sheet, which every book should have. And she kind of reads something that has the prologue in it. So it was nice to be able to have that in there without having to put it on the page, like word for word, her processing it in the moment. She kind of references and is like, oh, you know, this is the story of the first ever. I wonder what this has to do with anything. Nothing at all, Adira. But so that's what drove me to come up with the prologue. I hate that I wrote a prologue because I am not good at prologues. Apparently I am, because everybody likes this prologue, and I've never written a prologue before. Now I had to write a prologue for the second book, and I suck at it. And working on it with my editor has been a dream.
is that so?
It is so good. So lovely.
Okay, so this book has more violence, I would say, than your previous books, and it's darker, and not dark romance, because that's a very different thing, but it is a dark fantasy.
Correct.
Did you use that as an escape for anything? Obviously, we don't have to talk about the world that it is right now. But do you use fantasy and your books as an escape, whether you're writing or reading fantasy?
It gets really interesting when you add the dark element into that question.
Yeah.
The answer is yes, of course. But do I fantasize the same way that Adira fantasizes about some things in this book? I'm not entirely sure. Yes, I use fantasy as a way to escape, because I think there's a lot going on in our world and even our own individual personal lives that we might not talk about, we might not be able to talk about, we might be processing on our own, and it's really beneficial to be able to get it out somehow. And as the eldest daughter, who has eldest daughter syndrome, who deals with taking care of everyone else before taking care of herself, this was very much an exploration in personal growth, as well as an escape from personal growth, because I could make Adira do it even if I didn't have to do it. But as far as the darker elements go, it's kind of was a way for me to sort of get out and honor the brutally beautiful dreams that I have. And I have suffered from nightmares for as long as I can remember. And I was taught very early on by my mom to sort of exercise those thoughts by journaling. And it was a coping mechanism for me for how to process these really dark, very, very heavy dreams that like a 7-year-old shouldn't be having. But for some reason I was. And then it sort of transitioned into like an activity that I enjoyed, and then I wasn't scared of the dark anymore, and I kind of found myself looking for these interesting kind of dualities in nature. And like I would say that for me, writing something dark is a way of honoring a different part of myself that doesn't always get to see the light.
I love that. That's beautiful. All right, we're gonna have a little fun because that was emotional.
Noted.
I know that you like video games.
Yes.
And earlier you mentioned Pokemon.
Yes.
If someone were to adapt one of the books into a video game, what kind of video game would it be?
So the Beast Charmers series would be open world, very much like Pokemon. Gotta catch them all. House of Blight would probably be an RPG. some sort. First person for sure. I don't know if you could really play the other characters. I would want to then write their backstories and have that influence it, and then that would be a whole nother adventure and a whole nother book and a whole nother video game probably.
But that's what we all want.
Okay, well,
So get on it. Hurry up.
Noted.
Okay, so on the note of like the other maybe not main characters, if you could pick a character from this world and a character from the other world, and they got to hang out together, would they hang out in one of these worlds? Would they hang out in our world? What would they be doing?
That's such an interesting question.
Is that an insult?
It's not an insult. It's just I don't really know how to 100% know how to answer it. Like I do and I don't, because I feel like none of them would get along, quite frankly. However,
Fair.
I feel like after like a tense standoff of like posturing, Caleb and Seville would get along very well, and then they'd go to a bar and hit on all the women.
Yep.
Together. Together they'd be wingman.
Those were literally the two characters.
Yeah,
I
no,
had in my brain.
100%, and it would be in this world.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'd like a dingy.
A dingy dive bar.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Scene. They would have a contest about who could pick up which woman faster.
Yes, 100%.
And Seville would win.
Obviously. She's my fave. Okay, so Beast Charmers and this, there are magical creatures in both. Do you see any kind of thematic through line through the books with those magical creatures?
Not
people,
so
I guess.
much. I think it's important to kind of include a level of familiarity when you're stepping into like a novel. So yeah, they're completely different worlds and they don't have any ties to each other whatsoever. But like I think in general, people like animals and people like companions and people like want to see that. And it's sort of like that level of it, that tie of it for me. And I like animals and companionship. And you think about all these other big books out there too. Like if you look at like Rebecca Yarros and like the dragons and like whatnot, like it's almost like a trope in and of itself. And it gives readers something similar to step into between books, between authors, between everything. So then once you have that, you can kind of tweak it a little bit and say, okay, well, now that you're here with my companion, here's how this companion is different from all these other companions. And that's what makes Ewenna special, or that's what makes, any of the other creatures special.
You brought up Yarros.
I did.
I feel like we've got to talk about romantasy a little bit because I work in publishing and I have for a long time. You're an author. Romantasy wasn't a thing. Wait. In terms of an official genre.
Okay.
But it's been around for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think it's kind of become such a big thing in recent years?
Book talk, Bookstagram. And honestly, like those two things have shepherded this genre to the forefront, honestly, much to my pleasure, because that's what I write. And back when I was baby author and writing this stuff and not sure if it was like a valued idea because it wasn't branded as such, I was like, oh, nobody's ever going to pick this up. Or where do you put it on a shelf? Is it romance? Is it fantasy? Now I don't have to ask that question. Is it YA? No, but it, a lot of YA fantasy has romance in it. So like, where does it live? So that was a big question for a long time until people started to just kind of accept that like, oh, look, readers like magic and kissing. Weird. Let's brand it that way. But I think what romantasy in particular does well, and what the branding has done for it that is really exceptional, is it's allowed readers from both genres to enjoy both works. So like a really good romantasy, and I'm not talking like the most prolific prose or the most like compelling plot or anything, but a good romantasy has enough familiarity for romance readers to feel comfortable stepping into a fantasy world and not be inundated with like lots and lots of exposition or heavy world building or that kind of stuff, and vice versa. Fantasy readers can step into romantasy and appreciate some of that world building, but maybe more conventional dialogue or more conventional character choices that don't require like 20 pages of lineage charts or 20 pages of maps to just kind of understand character dynamics. So that's why I like romantasy.
Yeah. You kind of brought it up, and we were talking about it earlier in the car, and I'm going to spring it on you. Sorry, not sorry. So YA versus adult.
Mm-hmm.
you've kind of threaded the needle there. And we talked about how sometimes it's really difficult to categorize YA versus adult. What's the differences for you, and how did you navigate that?
That's a really tough question because marketing and publishing has blurred that line. It used to be really simple. Like if there's sex on the page, it's not young adult, right? Like it's not a thing. And then we kind of were like, oh yeah, teenagers have sex. Weird.
What?
Weird. Novel concept. And then it became, for me, when I was like, I actually, this question actually got brought up at San Diego Comic-Con. Were you the one who pitched the same question to Katie and I?
I was at Emerald City.
Okay.
It's not San Diego.
And it's like, for me, I kind of posed the question back, like, where do you want your kids to learn about this? Do you want your kids to learn about it from, like, maybe a romance novel where there's lots of consent and lots of romance and lots of character building and trust, hopefully. I mean, I don't know what they're reading. But, like, or do you want them to learn it from somewhere else? And, like, that's your decision as a parent. And that's kind of what I always put it back on. So, like, for when it comes to the line between YA and adult, and I get people who ask me this all the time, like, can they read your book? And I'm like, well, yeah, sure. I mean, anyone can read the book. But, like, as the adult, as the parent in the equation, you have to decide what you've done, what you've talked to your kid about, what you're comfortable with them asking you questions about, and where you want them learning that information from. So, like, my first series started as adult and transitioned to YA in a weird publishing wild ride that we do not have to go into. But in that particular series, like, it's much more geared toward, like, 16-year-olds and some of the choices that like Lena would make. And this book is not. It doesn't have as much like explicit sex, I would say, but the character decisions are adult. The choices that she's making are very adult. The language and the way that she moves through her world is very adult. So, like, it's not just, it's no longer just like, is the door open or not when they're having like touchy-feely time. It's really about how much our kids are being exposed to, where they're at, and how you want them exposed to that information. And I think books are a great way to sort of open that door and have conversations with your kids. And quite frankly, when my kids are of that age range, I would rather them read a book and then talk to me about it than maybe, I don't know, talk to their friends in the locker room and get a different opinion about how women should be treated or how consent should be treated.
Yeah, same. We're going to open it up for questions in a few minutes. So if you've got those, start thinking about them. We're going to do another, what if this happened? If we kind of talked about it with Seville coming into the modern world in Callum, but if one of your characters had to survive, and now I'm using survive, in the modern world, which one do you think could do it?
Lydia would not survive. For the record, I'm just going to throw that out there. She would not survive. No. She would hate this world.
Who's Lydia?
Lydia, for people who haven't read it yet, which is probably that's kind of where we're at in the majority.
Most people,
I'm assuming.
Yep.
She is the aunt in the book of the two mischievous children of Everlivings, and she is very uppity. And I think she's smart enough to figure out our world and survive in it. I don't think she wants to. So that's sort of the X factor. Who would survive? Probably Adira. I mean, easily. Like, she's the most adaptable out of all of them.
Yeah. So. Can we talk about family dynamics? Whether it's real blood family or found family, because I know we like found family a lot. How do those relationships come up in this book?
I've always been a sucker for found family. I'm not quite sure why. I have a great family. I have a blood brother whom I love very dearly. And I have lots of friends maybe that's why, I have lots of friends who I cherish very much. But I like the idea of choosing someone and choosing love. And even in these situations where you either have like brothers, sisters, fated mates, anything like that, I like involving the element of choice. It's always just been sort of important to me in any facet. And so, like, I always try to weave that in. Yes, there is the sense of, like, blood family in this for sure, because Adira takes care of her brothers in this and would do anything for her younger brothers and feels that familial responsibility, that very motherly sort of love toward them. And then she sort of adopts this new family throughout the process and realizes that that kind of love can extend beyond your bloodline. And, you know, I feel that in my everyday life with like my friends and extended family who I might not see all the time. And I just think there's something really beautiful in choosing who you want to be around.
Yes, same. I choose you. So we're, in addition to writing fantasy and the worlds and the magical creatures, you're also writing romance, obviously. So do you have favorite tropes to write and favorite tropes to read?
Yes.
Well, what are they?
It's just yes. My favorite tropes to write are enemies to lovers, slow burn, forced proximity, there's only one bed, touch her and you die, you know, any of those like really like those kind of vibes. And as such, I also like reading all of those. I do not like secret babies.
Same.
I just don't. I don't understand. I don't have a listen. I like you write your secret baby. That's fine. Enjoy your secret baby. I don't understand why. So like fundamentally in my brain, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like why? But like again, I've never been in that life situation, so perhaps it's relevant. It's just not to me, and especially in a I can't imagine in a fantasy maybe setting. Maybe. I guess maybe if it's like I don't know. You get into some weird. I'm not gonna write a secret baby.
Fair.
Watch me write a secret baby in 2 years and eat these words.
Yeah, we're going to have a secret baby in book 2.
No. No.
Do you want to talk about enemies to lovers specifically and what you think is real enemies to lovers?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, enemies to lovers is kind of, I feel like it's everyone's favorite trope to slap on a book right now. And I have a very different definition of what enemies are, apparently, than the rest of the world. And that's okay. Maybe you like light enemies where they just said some mean words to each other at the office and then suddenly they're friends. And then next thing you know, they're getting married. I like it when my enemies want to kill each other, quite frankly. I think the best enemies to lovers that I've read out there is Hurricane Wars. Because I've never seen a better example of one, slow burn, and two, they want to murder each other the whole damn book, even when they're supposed to be together. Spoilers, but like I'm telling you, like that to me is a prime example of enemies to lovers.
I need to read that one.
You should. I highly or audiobook it for anyone who like it is a very heavy exposition entry, fantastically written. Very like if you need a little bit of extra, go for the audiobook.
Okay. I'm placing a hold on Libby. Okay, so I do have more questions, but I'm just going to ask you one before we open it up to everyone. What are you reading? Or
Nothing.
do you have any recommendations
have lots
from
of
the past few
recommendations.
years?
I can recommend from the past 6 months. I am not currently reading a book because I am editing. And when I'm editing, I am not reading because I don't like to have the fear or the accidental pull from someone else that while I'm working on it. That's like my biggest fear. Rachel Gillig is like my absolute favorite. One Dark Window, Two Twisted Crowns. Cannot wait for Night and the Moth. Moth and Night. I just said it back. Night and the Moth. Thank you. That's in May, I believe. Mm-hmm. That's on my list. Highly recommend. It's a very mild, in my opinion, romantasy, but also very dark and gothic. So right up my alley. Love, obviously, the Hurricane Wars. I need to read Monsoon Rising. It's on my list here as soon as I'm done with my edits because I need to understand how this enemies to lovers resolves. And I just completely stopped right there. There was another one.
2's fine.
I can see the cover though. It's very.
Do you want to describe it? I bet
it's very beautiful. It's very beautiful 2D. It's about Asian mythology. Daughter of the Moon Goddess. There we go.
Got yourself there.
Highly recommend.
Nice. All right. Does anyone have any questions?
Oh.
Whoa.
Uh-oh.
Hey, Patrick. We're getting some feedback here.
Right. While we figure that out, writing question. What's the fun part of writing a book and what's the boring part?
The beginning and the boring part is the middle. The beginning is really fun for me because typically when I have an idea, it's because of a dream or something like that, and it feels very real and flush and immediate, and I have to just like get it out. And so like that process for me is very enticing. And then I also like to draw maps and talk and do the character work and like go to Pinterest and like create music and storyboards and like playlists and like all of that like back matter pre-work is really fun for me. And then I hate the middle because I'm not a plotter. Fun fact.
You pants all of your books?
Most of them.
Wow, that's actually really impressive,
I
though, for a
do
fantasy
pants-
world.
I pants most of my books.
Amazing.
Yes. Yeah. I know that there's an A and a Z. And there are some letters in between.
One or two.
Just one or two.
Are your Pinterest boards public?
I don't think so.
Oh, never mind. Sorry. Okay, and then are you ready? Okay. All right. Questions. Up front, right here.
Nope. We'll come back.
Okay. Would you ever redo the Beast Charmer, but do the adult version? I would buy more books to buy the box set.
Oh.
I already have 2
Should
right
we
here
ask
for
that
you to sign.
publisher? This gets into a really fun gray area of publishing where I don't have a lot of control.
So I definitely
would.
hit subscribe so I could get the spicy scenes. I read them.
You can subscribe and get the spicy scenes. That is accurate because
Subscribe to her newsletter.
my
she
newsletter. Yes, correct. You can get the spicy scenes. I send you a free download. So fun fact about the Beast Charmers is it started as adult.
Yes.
And it was marketed as adult, released as adult, came out as mass market, which is the edition that was like the airport things that when you
Mass market
this
are
size.
those.
This mass market is this size. And it had a very interesting, beautiful cover, but it was read very much as like Wonder Woman. And like if you put that on a shelf next to a bunch of half-naked men in a romance section, usually women are not picking that up. So then the team at the time was like, man, then people pick this up. They're really enjoying it, but we got to pick it up. So why don't we try changing the cover? And then we also noticed that a lot of readers were miscategorizing it as YA because this was at the time when like Mass was having the issue where her book was getting categorized as YA, but it was really new adult. And then there was so much issues with the book boxes and, all that stuff. So they're like, let's rebrand it as young adult and put it in Barnes & Noble as a special edition and see what happens. Well, it did really well. So then they said, we're going to do the whole series as YA. And then they never went back to the adult versions of it. So I would love to repackage it and redo it as an adult, as well as continue that series as adult, because Shadows of the Lost, which is technically the first book in the follow-up series, was supposed to be the 4th book in that series, which is why I tell everyone, please read Shadows. Read the other 3 first, though, because otherwise you're going to get thrust into a world that makes no sense. And Shadows is adult. But the first 3 are young adult. So it is just like, welcome to my wild publishing ride for my first series. It's kind of crazy. I would love to answer your question.
The first one is on Kindle in
The
adult
first
version.
one
It's
on
adult
Kindle is
version.
adult. Yes.
I was very
Because
excited.
apparently there's an issue with Amazon where you can't re-upload with the same ISBN number as young adult. So sorry, teenagers. You're reading the adult version.
To our point earlier, teens have sex.
Teens have sex. Hashtag teens have sex.
Yeah. We have another one up here.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi.
I love playlists that accommodate
Yes.
books, and so I'm just curious if you had like top 2 or 3 songs that you would put on a playlist for this one.
Where's my phone? My mom has it. Yes. I'm very bad at names and titles and all of that stuff, but I can tell you a few artists who I would absolutely put on it. Anything by Beth Crowley. Not anything, but I like a lot of Halsey, a lot of Billie Eilish, and a lot of like dark, moody kind of stuff like is it public? Are you looking right now? Is that
I'm
what you're
looking
doing? Okay, might
Of
not
course
be
I am.
public. Is it public?
I found your profile,
Look at
but
it. Let me see. Look at this. Oh, not my Femme Fatale playlist. That's what I work out to. It's all about F the patriarchy. Damn, it's not. See all playlist. Hold on. House of Blight. Oh, it is public. Look at that. Okay. Yep. Beth Crowley's on here. I really have a lot of Beth Crowley. Has anyone heard of Morgan Clay? She's fantastic. She does remakes of songs in a very like theatric way, and they are all about romantasy books. Highly recommend checking her out. I found her on TikTok. She's great. Yeah, and Livingston. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
Okay.
No, I don't. I was just going to give this to you.
Don't be shy. Come on.
Okay. Oh, you do have a question? Great. Perfect. Go
I
ahead.
have a mic.
Go for it.
But I don't know
make it
that
up on the fly.
I'll make up a question.
Love it.
Well, I was going to ask you about how new adult fits in with all of that kind of categorizing, because I still find that real freaking vague.
Oh, well, me too.
So does publishing.
So does publishing. I really want to understand what a new adult wizard is doing in the world. Like, what is he doing? Is he having alcoholic problems on the weekends and trying to figure out how to pass his college course? Like, I really want to understand, because in my mind, especially in like fantasy, where ages kind of get like a bit wishy-washy with when you're an adult and when you're not an adult, like, what is a new adult doing in a fantasy world that is different from what a young adult is learning or what from an adult is learning? Because I think new adult works as a category in romance that is specifically college and making poor decisions in college. And if I'm making poor decisions in a fantasy world at that age range, typically you're treated as an adult anyway. Like, I'm thinking, let's talk about Rachel Gillig, for example, in One Dark Window. Her main character is 20. So what? That would kind of classify as new adult. Is there anything in there that kind of strikes as no, right? I think I've seen her book marketed as new adult as well as adult. I don't know the difference. I wish I did, because I don't get it. I think it's like, does this bookstore have a shelf for new adult? If so, let's put it there. I don't know. I could be wrong.
I don't know how it works in fantasy.
I don't know how it works in fantasy specifically.
Yeah.
Because there's not like a new, like, I think about the problems that I was dealing with as a 20-year-old, and like the life lessons that I was learning as a 20-year-old. Kind of feel like a coming of age a little bit, which generally falls more YA. So if you're having those coming of age like issues, and you're overcoming that and becoming your own person, that very much feels like YA fantasy to me. Versus adult feels just like a little bit about the way you talk, a little bit about the problems, the type of problems that you face. But I don't know.
I think technically the reason for new adult, I mean, I could talk about this forever.
I know you were in publishing. That's why I keep looking at you.
But
I don't know the answer to this.
with fantasy, I think what they're trying to go for is young adult technically starts when you're like 13. 13-year-olds are not making the same decisions or having the same life experiences as 18, 19, 20-year-olds. So I think it was just an attempt to have another category in between actual young adult and actual adult. And when publishing came up with new adult, like, I don't know, even 15, 20 years ago at this point, they just did a terrible job of actually categorizing books in that space, because it was supposed to be, like, to your point earlier, for books about people in college who have just graduated high school, they're starting college. I agree that I don't know if it really works in fantasy, though, because, like, if you're going to save the world, like, you're probably not really a young adult anymore.
No.
Well,
I mean, a lot of YA fantasy, they save the world.
This
I
is
mean,
the
we're just going to
problem.
pretend that
this is
16-year-olds
the problem
can
with
do it.
new adult.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. It's weird in fantasy.
It is.
I don't think it works in fantasy, but whatever.
Do we have another question?
Cool.
When you go into your writing your books, do you already have the titles, like, you
Ooh,
know what
title
it's going to be,
questions.
or does
Yes
it
and
come
no.
to you later?
Yes and no. This series, yes, and I was very adamant about keeping this title, and thankfully they let me keep it, because most of the time they don't. Fun fact. Like, for example, the Beast Charmer series, I think that thankfully I was just not married to the title, so I didn't care, but I think when I went on submission to publishers, it was called Dangerous Beasts, something of that nature. And then they switched it to Kingdom of Exiles, which feels very YA, and then got marketed as adult. So I don't really understand how we came to all of that, but like, I liked the title, so I was fine with it. And I know that a lot of publishers will do market testing on titles. So like, I know for a fact that that's what they did with my first series. I don't think they did it with this series, because they're just like, we love the title too. And I was like, great, this never happens. Most authors have their titles changed. Pretty sure that's the case these days.
Yeah, you have some authors who are, like, very adamant and say,
Yeah, I mean, if they want to
this
fight
can't
about it.
change. This is what I want. But yeah, it is very
I didn't
like,
want to change
market
it,
driven.
but I didn't have to, so it's fine.
Yeah.
And like right now, the working title for book 2 is Manner of Decay. So I'm hoping it stays because that feels very roll off the tongue.
It does. Go add it on Goodreads.
Go out on, go out on Goodreads. It doesn't exist yet, but go do it.
I mean, we could
It
create
might. I don't know.
On that note, before we see if we have more questions, what about character names? How do you come up with character names? Do they just come up in your nightmares?
Some of them come up in my nightmares.
'Kay.
Some of them I like go to Google Translate. And I look up other variations for words that I want to have like a certain feeling or emotion. It's not what I did with any of these characters, but it is what I have done in the past. Where I'm like, oh, I want someone to like have this sort of like hopeful feeling. And then I'll like look at words that have the word hope in them and then like pick different things that just sound good together is generally what it goes. In Kingdom, in that world in particular, I was very, very focused on like sounds. So like all of the assassins had very hard, almost like Russian-esque kind of hard consonant names in them. And the charmers were much more flowy, much more elvish, much more like that kind of nature to them. I didn't do that with this book. I just said, you sound great. This is your name. And I will always try to name my characters with different letters. Because it is my biggest pet peeve when you have two main characters who sound so drastically similar, like Saruman and Saruman. And I can't. I refuse to do it. So I keep a list of all of my character names. So I pick different start letters, at least.
Fair. Do we have questions online?
Pretty quiet tonight, so I
Okay.
don't think we do.
Okay.
Anyone else in the building?
All right.
Oh,
Oh.
there we go.
Adira's go-to cocktail for those online.
I mean, she drinks a lot of wine in the book, but I think that's just because it's presented to her. Seville's go-to is wine, for sure. So Adira's go-to, probably something herbal, probably something lavender, maybe like a lavender or elderflower gin and tonic of some sort. Yeah.
There was a blueberry and lavender gin and tonic at the restaurant we had dinner at that I think is perfect.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Maybe vodka because I don't drink gin, but like drink whatever you want.
All right, Max, this comes time for the giveaway.
Okay.
We need a number 1 through 22.
I don't say it right.
Oh, no, you say it.
Yeah.
Oh, I say
You
it.
pick it,
I
and
thought
that's
I
what
just was like,
number person.
I always do these wrong though, and then I like give it. Okay, 12.
Who has the number 12? All right. Excellent. So tonight you win a book called Seventh Blade. It comes out in June. So please read. Don't post quite yet your review if you do. But this is really cool. This is an author who wrote from part of the Dragon Age and Dragon Age Inquisition game.
Enjoy.
So there you go.
Woo.
Excellent. Are you ready to sign some books?
I'm ready to sign some books.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So for those of you in line or in the chairs, if you don't mind picking up your chair, putting it to where the cookbooks are, that way the chairs don't fall down. We'll go ahead and clear that out. Go ahead and get in line by your number, and feel free to get pictures, etc.